As a home buyer, if it feels like this is a very difficult time to buy a home, you are not alone. That is the majority consensus among home buyers throughout the United States right now, is that housing affordability is extremely difficult, supply is extremely low, at least relative to what people can afford and actually want to buy. And it seems like it's been this way for a while, and it doesn't really feel like any major change is coming anytime soon. That's really what I want to dive into in this episode. As somebody who is constantly working with home buyers and teaching them how to navigate the home buying process without hiring a buyer's agent, I get to talk to people all over the country and hear about their boots on the ground experience of what it is that they're seeing in their local markets. There's been some definite trends that have emerged that I want to share with you all here in hopes it'll be helpful to you. I'm also going to stir in some of the thoughts from a couple of my economic heroes. I know that is geeky to have economic heroes, but this past week, Housing Wire hosted a discussion/debate between Logan Motoshami and Ivy Zellman on what is happening in the housing market. Super insightful. So I'm sure that a lot of what it is that I'm going to be saying is influenced by them. I'll include a link to that discussion in case you want to geek out on that with me as well later. If you're new here, my name is Nick. I am the host of the DIY Homebuyer Podcast and founder of the DIY Homebuyer Academy, where I teach homebuyers like you how to save big money by not having to have a buyer's agent. You save that commission. You are an empowered and educated home buyer. It's an awesome process. I've loved helping home buyers navigate the home buying process on their own. And if that's something that you're interested in, please do subscribe to the show, leave a comment, share this with somebody you know that's thinking about buying a home, or get in touch with me. Again, all of those links are down in the description below. Now, I've got a list of questions here that I am just going to start going through, and let's just dive in now. Here we go. Question number 1. Why does it feel like there are never enough homes I can actually afford to buy? Am I imagining this, or is something bigger going on in the housing market? And here's the deal. You're not imagining it because, as you know, 2020 to basically 2022, house prices pretty much across the United States skyrocketed. It became almost free to borrow money from a bank when interest rates dropped to like 2.5%. And so home buyers just went crazy. It was a mad dash to buy a home in that time. And because there was so much demand in the market, well, not enough supply, too much demand, home prices skyrocketed. And then late 2022 into 23, 24, even now in 25, well, the thing that skyrocketed was not home prices anymore, but instead it was interest rates, where things jumped from an average interest rate of around 3% all the way up to about 8% at its peak. And even today, as I record this in mid-April 2025, we're looking at interest rates right around 7%, maybe high 6% for a 30-year conventional. That makes it very expensive to borrow money, which hurts housing affordability more than anything. But here's the thing. Usually when interest rates go up, house prices come down. That hasn't been the case this time around. House prices have stayed relatively stable throughout most markets in America. There have been a few areas like maybe the Phoenix area, Boise, Idaho, Austin, Texas. They're seeing a bit of a price correction of 10, maybe even to 20%. But those markets saw, in some cases, 50, 60, 70, 80% increases in home values between 2020 and 2022. So even there, the reductions that we're seeing in home values, most homeowners are sitting on an incredible amount of equity, extremely low interest rates that they were able to lock in or refinance into. So they're not particularly motivated to sell, which means that supply is still relatively low compared to pre-2020 trends. And yet there is a lot of demand for housing. Because of that, it does keep home prices high, makes it very difficult for home buyers like yourself to find a great deal on a house, especially when you're having to pay through the nose in interest. So no, not an imagined problem. What you're feeling is very, very real. Now, this next question is, everyone keeps talking about a housing shortage, but as a buyer, should I care about the numbers or just focus on finding something in my budget? This is an excellent question, and this is a tension that I'm going to feel throughout this entire episode, which is talking about macroeconomic data, things that impact the entire United States universally, and then talking about you and your market, which is hard to do because Denver, Colorado is very different from Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is very different from Boston, Massachusetts, which is also totally different from Tallahassee, Florida. All right. And when you really like rubber meets the road of this stuff, housing happens locally. So these macroeconomic things that are affecting the entire country, yes, they have some impact on what's happening in your local market. But the reality still is that should you care about overall inventory numbers? No, because the inventory of what's going on in Boston doesn't affect you if you're buying a home in Denver. And so your local market data does need to take precedence over what's happening at a national level. And the thing is and I've always said this, like, if you find a home that you can see yourself really enjoying for 7+ years and you can reasonably afford it. I'm not saying that you have to love the number that you're going to be paying every month or paying for the home, but that it's one that you've got buffer. You're not going to be house poor, that you can reasonably make those monthly payments, then yeah, it's a good time for you to buy a home. Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody can tell you what's going to happen next week, next month, next year. We are all just trying to do our best to read what the data shows us and then make predictions based upon probabilities. But there are no certainties in this game. So if you find a home that you can afford, that you like, can see yourself being reasonably happy in for many years to come, then it's probably a fine time to buy. Now let's move on to this next question. I've noticed more for sale signs popping up lately. Does this mean that the market's finally turning in my favor? Or is it still a chase for too few homes? Now, based upon the data that's available to us right now, housing supply levels are still lower than there is actual demand, people that are wanting to buy a home or to move into a new home. So seeing more for sale signs popping up in your neighborhood, that is a good sign in terms of overall inventory, that inventory is on the rise, and we are seeing that. But there has not been that like homeostasis or equilibrium between housing supply and demand for homes. But the reason that we're seeing supply go up and stay up, like days on market in most markets across America are growing and increasing, is because, yes, while there is more supply, those homes are coming on the market generally at too high of a price point for most home buyers to be able to afford them. So we're seeing supply go up, but home buyers are not jumping on those new homes because of the affordability issue. Now, ultimately, I think that this is going to be a good thing. We need inventory numbers to continue to rise until we have that equilibrium. And as those inventory numbers continue to rise, well, there's going to be more and more pressure on home sellers, especially the home sellers that have to move because of changes in life circumstances, career changes, deaths, marriages, divorces, all of those kinds of things. There are people that will have to sell. And when you have to sell, you don't just get to sit on the market for 6, 7, 8 months until somebody crazy comes along and is willing to pay your top dollar list price. Instead, you actually have to be realistic and reduce your price as a seller to what the market is willing to pay for your home. And the more sellers we have that are in those kind of positions where they have to be reasonable about their sale price, the more that we'll have buyers that actually purchase those homes. So it is good that you're seeing more for sale signs popping up in your market, but we still need that number to increase. Next question. If most people selling homes are just buying another one, how does that help me as a first-time buyer trying to break into the market? And here's the sad reality. It doesn't. this is the kind of myth of inventory that it's around between 70 and 80% of home sellers are also home buyers. And so they kind of neutralize the market. And in some cases, like in the cases of divorce, you have one home go for sale and then two homes that are being purchased, at least in many cases. So as a first-time home buyer, this is again why we need more supply in the market. And that supply doesn't really come by people that are listing their home as a resale or existing home market. We actually need new supply to be built or created. And so new construction does play into this dynamic a lot. But unfortunately, it's been so darn expensive to build new homes that builders aren't building nearly as many, and the ones that they're building, they just aren't selling as quickly because most first-time home buyers cannot afford them. So we have this real dilemma of we need people to move out of their existing homes that would be considered more of that starter home, smaller, more affordable home for a first-time buyer, and then to move into something bigger or more expensive or better. But the supply of those new homes or bigger, more expensive homes, well, it just right now, it hasn't been there. So it has been tough, especially for first-time home buyers where supply has been low, and the homes that are out there for those first-time buyers, they're very difficult to afford. And then this next question here, they say we're not in a huge housing shortage like we thought. So why does it still feel impossible to find a decent home under $300,000? And the first part of this question is like, we have seen the housing inventory across America increase a bit year over year from 23 to 24 to 25. That number is starting to go up, which, as I mentioned earlier, that is a good sign. But why can't you get a good home under $300,000 in most markets? And it's because the inventory that is coming available, a lot of it is new construction, and in most markets, very, very difficult to build a house for under $300,000. And there's a lot of regulatory reasons for why that is. There's just the increased costs of materials and labor, especially over the past several years. Builders just, they can't build a house for under that. And then the people that you have that would be moving out of their home that would resell for about $300,000, well, a lot of them, they're locked in at an incredibly low interest rate, or they have their house functionally paid off. And the idea of them moving out, buying a more expensive house, having to pay market rates, well, they're just not wanting to do it. So those homes that are under $300,000, well, those are the ones that are the most like few and far between. We really do need to figure out how to answer this question of how do we build a much more affordable home and just get people on the ladder, first-time buyers, where they're able to afford a house and just get on the housing ladder so that they can eventually sell that first home and buy something bigger that suits their needs as their family grows, whatever the life stage changes that they make. So the next question here is affordable housing just a buzzword? I mean, when in history was buying a home ever actually easy for someone like me? And this is a phenomenal question as well. I do think that in many ways, affordable housing is a myth. Like, housing has never been cheap. Now, there have been times where, especially in hindsight, like if you look back at 08, 09, 2010, homes were cheap compared to what they are today. And then if you talk with anybody who was buying homes in the late 80s or early 90s, you know, like it's crazy to think what you could have bought in Southern California, markets like San Diego for a couple $100,000 in the early 90s. That's now worth like $3 million today. It's just absurd when we think about it. And so, of course, it's easy to look in hindsight and be like, housing was affordable back then. But taking the late 80s, early 90s, I mean, interest rates were historically high then, oftentimes around 10%. So borrowing that money wasn't easy. Wages were much, much, much lower than they are today. When we go back to 08, 09, 2010, there was so many people who were out of work that they saw their wages reduced. There was so much fear and uncertainty in the market that, yes, while a house was affordable, no lenders were approving new loans. Nobody had the kind of certainty that they needed when it came to their job or life situation. It was not a good time in that regard to buy a house, even though homes looked more affordable then. And while today we look at home prices and mortgage rates and say that okay, they're still high on both counts, we also have a lot of the uncertainties when it comes to today, tariffs and again, job loss, and what does the future of economic situation look like for most people. So I don't know that it's ever easy to buy a home. Houses just have always been expensive. And you can only really look in hindsight to see when were the best times to buy. So if you're waiting to buy until houses are affordable, you'll probably never buy a house. And you'll just look back being like, well, I missed it again, which, going back to that earlier point, is why, hey, if you found a home that you really, really like and can see yourself enjoying for many years to come, and you can comfortably afford it, then now is a good time to buy a home. That is the cream of the crop when it comes to affordable housing. Next question. I keep hearing builders can't make homes cheap enough. What's stopping them, and how does that affect my search as a DIY homebuyer? And there are a lot of things when it comes to why builders can't make homes cheap enough. Some of it is that the most desirable places to live are also where land is most expensive. And so, especially when we think of first-time buyers or younger families, where they want to be where the schools are the best and where there's the most kind of resources and services available to them, that is going to be in more developed communities, whether that's a city or a suburb. And land in those areas has just gotten so expensive that for a builder to purchase a lot, well, they're already $150,000 in, and they haven't even done anything to it yet. And then they have all kinds of fees when it comes to impact fees and development costs and all of the permitting fees and how long it takes to do all of that, where most builders and developers, they're paying interest just on the land that they've bought. So the land in that regard gets more expensive because of the interest that they're paying, that they had to purchase it with, and then all of the fees that they're paying and all of the carrying costs that they have until the permits and things come back. And all of that just gets, before a house has even been built, the builder is in several $100,000, and then they still have all of the materials and labor and risk of selling it and, of course, making a profit. Builders are not just out there doing a solid for communities. They exist to make a profit. And so when you put all these factors together, lumber and all of the materials that you need to build a house, and the just the cost of labor, having hourly employees, well, it is stupid expensive. And until we see some regulatory changes where builders can either subdivide land further or build smaller houses, or when impact fees are reduced, there's not as many hoops for them to jump through, where rates come down so that their carrying costs aren't quite as high. Those are all the factors that need to come together in order for builders to build a more affordable home. But until those things happen, I get it. Their hands are really tied. It's not that they don't want to build a more affordable home and serve more potential home buyers. It's just that in the current circumstances that they have, they can't. All right, let's keep rolling here. So politicians keep promising to fix housing, but as a buyer, should I even bother hoping for help from the government? At a national level, probably not. Like whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, this is not a political take. I just don't think that the kind of changes that we really need to see happening in housing are going to start at the federal level. Like, sure, Trump wants to open up federal lands to make it so that there's more, less expensive land for builders to develop. But by and large, most people don't want to live in those far out, remote, rural areas. And it's going to be risky for builders to take those federal lands and really try and start building the infrastructure around them and making those desirable places where people want to relocate and spend their money. Will some people do it? Perhaps, probably, but that's not going to be the answer, at least so far as I can tell. What will help at a political level is going to be things that are done locally in your local city, in your county, and then in your state, and in that order in terms of impact. And so as cities pass policies to increase housing density, allow for ADUs, that is additional dwelling units, to be added to backyards to make more affordable housing options. And there's some really interesting things happening all across the United States as far as that goes, where you're able to build an ADU in your backyard or convert a detached garage, condominiumize so that then you can sell that unit separately. I'll do a whole nother video on that at some point because that's a really fascinating sort of option. Could be really good for homeowners that are wanting to increase or rather realize some of their equity in their property. Would also create a much more affordable option for many people looking to just get on the housing ladder. But the allowance for ADUs like that has to happen at a city or county or state kind of level. Similar when it comes to what kind of regulations and fees are required for builders. And then we can talk about the different like first-time homebuyer programs. Some of those can be effective in helping at least first-time homebuyers get into a house and get onto that housing ladder. They can also be highly inflationary. So I'm not saying that there's any silver bullets here that just make it all easy. I am saying that if politics are going to protect, or rather, if politics are going to improve the housing situation, that's going to need to happen at a local level rather than a federal level. Next question. I've heard that local rules make it harder to build affordable homes. How do I figure out what's blocking new options in my area? Well, this is where you got to do some kind of deep dives on, all right, what are the zoning requirements of the land in different areas of your city? The classic is NIMBYism, which is the not in my backyard. And that's where people who have these larger lots, oftentimes a half acre to an acre, and they've got some developable land behind them. They've got these protected green spaces. I mean, as beautiful and wonderful as those are, I understand why people would say, I don't want any more development in my backyard. I don't want them to build a condos or townhomes or something like that. That'll hurt my property value. It'll disrupt my view. And so there are those zoning requirements within each city and area that determine what can be built. And the people that are the wealthiest and that have the most to protect, they lobby and advocate really hard for protecting those zoning regulations and not allowing there to be any changes so that there just can't be more development, especially in some of the most desirable areas. So you need to really look at, okay, what are the zoning, what areas are zoned what are the zoning laws and regulations, and what can be done to change those in order to help build more affordable homes. All right, another question here. As a DIY buyer, how do I stay confident in this market when prices, inventory, and even my job feel so unpredictable? And unpredictability and confidence, those two things typically don't go together, right? Like it's when we feel the most uncertain about what the future holds that we feel the least confident in making any sort of a decision. And I think it's okay where it's just, if you've got reasonable cause to doubt your job security, or if you just feel like I can't stomach the thought of spending $500,000 for this shack that I just won't be happy in, it's okay for you to just say, I'm going to sit it out. Like I will find a good rental and I'm not going to buy a house right now. That is totally a legitimate option. And I know that housing and the American dream are largely tied together. Like to fully realize the American dream is to have your own piece of dirt, your house that you love living in. But just because that is like this traditional American dream doesn't necessarily mean that it's right for everybody. And so it's okay for you to just take a step back and ask yourself the question of like, does home ownership make sense for me? Why? Why do I want to own a home? And what is it worth? Because again, like housing affordability is probably always going to be an issue. But on the other side of that, there's a lot of noise in the market. And yes, like tariffs may happen, it may not. The whole tariff on, tariff off drama that's been going on and what those are going to be, a 90-day pause, like who knows what the future holds there? Who knows what's going to happen with the stock market? Who knows what's going to happen in the housing market? The one thing that you can take comfort in is that housing is it's best viewed as like a long-term kind of play. And so if you're in a stage and season of life where there's some degree of predictability, where you look on the horizon and you say that like, I have a stable career. I don't see relocating at any point in the next decade. And I know kind of what my family situation is going to look like and what I need in a house, then you can weather whatever happens in the economic world. Because, gosh, even if you had bought a house at the height of the market in 2006, 2007, before the crash, like, yes, you would have seen your equity just totally disappear. But if you had bought a home that you could comfortably keep making the payments on, even through the financial downturn in 08, 09, 2010, well, by the time 2017, 2018, 2019 rolled around, I mean, the housing market at least, had seriously recovered, and you would be well above water again. Like you would have massive equity and then if you had held on to it throughout the COVID years, I mean, you're sitting on incredible equity where you nearly own your home. At least you're getting close to like having most of your home paid off. And so that's like one of the worst economic times that as a country we've ever faced. And so even if we were, and I'm not saying that we are, but even if we were to come into another depression-like era in 25, 26, 27, and you were to buy your house at the peak, well, as long as you've made a decision where you can comfortably afford it and you've got strategies for how you could continue to make your payments, if you can hold on to your home for 10 plus years, in all likelihood, I mean, the odds are incredibly high in your favor that you are going to come out ahead, and you'll have stable, predictable shelter, which is like one of, if not your number one need as a human. That's why I do say, though, it's so important to buy a place that's going to serve your needs for many, many years to come, a place that you can see yourself being happy in, and one that you can comfortably afford, that you're not already having to stretch for right here, right now. And don't buy it speculatively, assuming that rates are going to come down in 6 to 12 months, or that the house is just going to appreciate like crazy. Get all of that speculation out of your mind. Plan for worst case scenarios, that rates never come down and that your house never massively appreciates. Is it still does it still make sense for you? And if so, fantastic. Then you can confidently move forward. And if it doesn't, then it's okay to just say, you know what? Not the time for me. All right, final question here. At the end of the day, is home ownership still worth pursuing in 2025? Or should I rethink what winning looks like in this market? I do think that home ownership is still worth pursuing. even in 2025, as long as you consider everything that I said in the previous point, that home ownership is not right for everybody. And if it's not right for you, that is okay. But for the majority of Americans, home ownership is the number one wealth generating vehicle, because if you stay in your house long enough, you will see appreciation. You will build equity. For many Americans, home ownership is like a forced savings account, because even if you're paying a crazy amount in interest, you are also building equity in your house. You're paying off that home. And because they're not making any more land, like land is always going to have value to it. So I do think that pursuing home ownership, even in 2025, with all of the difficulties, with all of the uncertainties, is a very worthwhile pursuit. But I do think that what winning looks like in this market has to be changed from like, am I getting the best possible deal, the best possible price? Like, no, you're not. The best possible time to buy a home was probably 2020. And before that, it was probably 2009. And before that, it was probably 1991. Like the best time to buy was always in the rear view mirror. And you don't know what tomorrow is going to hold. Like, and I can say that personally. Like I sold my house at the very beginning of COVID because I was concerned about what COVID was going to do. I thought it was going to tank the housing market. I was listening to a lot of the fear mongers. I sold it before the elections because I was afraid of what the elections were going to do to the housing market. And my goodness, like I lost out on probably $100,000 had I have just waited another year or 18 months before selling. And I did that because I was trying to predict what the future held, and I was wrong. And pretty much anybody that you talk to that makes whether it's a decision to sell or a decision to buy based upon their predictions of the future, they almost always regret it. So when it comes to housing, don't make your decision based upon speculation of the future. Instead, just need to look at your situation right now. Do you have relative stability? Do you know what you want your future to look like? And do you have a house that you can comfortably afford, that you'll be in for 7+ years and can be really happy with? And if the answer to that is yes, I know it's like a broken record, but if the answer to that is yes, then absolutely, without hesitation, move forward on it and buy it. But if there's hesitation, like I love the Naval Ravikant quote where it's like, hey, when it comes to your housing, like if it isn't a hell yes, it's a hell no. And that's okay too. Like it's a huge investment. It's a lot of money. And while you can be nervous about it, like if you're not feeling good and excited about even underneath all that nervousness, if there's a real check of like, this could be the biggest mistake in my life, you want to listen to that and just step back, like kind of trust some of those intuitions and work through it before going ahead and making that decision. And that's really what I'm here to help home buyers do as well. Like that's why I love doing the one-on-one coaching, is because it's kind of like counseling, really related to home buying, but where we just get to work through, does this even make sense for you right now? Like what is going on with that nervousness underneath? And is there legitimacy that's stopping you from pursuing housing right now? Would it be better to wait, give you opportunity to save up more, give you an opportunity to see what happens in your job situation? Or are you just letting all the outside noise and what's happening in Boston affect your decisions in Portland, Oregon? Like, I love helping people work through that entire process. And so if you want to connect and work with me, talk with me one-on-one, I'd invite you to check out the link in the show notes, set up a meeting. Let's get to know each other through that. Do also join the DIY homebuyer community on School. You'll see the link there. Let me know what questions this episode creates for you, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks, y'all.